The Kola Peninsula, the first expansion map SnowRunner received, and arguably one of the best looking. My first impression of this map was wonderful, a vast, seemingly barren wasteland bridged together by a massive frozen lake. I've just finished up all the tasks and contracts in Kola, and thought that I'd like to have a conversation about this area, share some of my opinions and notable moments on the map with you guys, and give the map a review and rating. But of course, what's one of my videos without some history and background? The Kola Peninsula is found on the northwestern coast of Russia, near Finland and Norway. Despite being within the Arctic Circle, the peninsula sits close to the North Atlantic Current, meaning it has high temperatures in the winter for how north it is, with an average low of 8 degrees Fahrenheit in the coldest months. I find it funny how Kola really isn't that cold of a place, but being there in-game makes you feel like you're in the Arctic. The peninsula was pretty sparsely populated until the Soviet era, of course, where the population jumped from an estimated 15,000 in 1913 to over 1.1 million by 1990. It was discovered that the area was rich in natural resources, such as iron, sulfur, and titanium. It was also good for farming reindeer and fishing. The resource boom led to lots of work settlements and mining complexes throughout the region. During the Cold War, the peninsula acted as a naval basing area for a large portion of the Soviet naval and air forces, which would explain why there are so many dilapidated ships in the waters on the map. The modern economy is mostly still mining, and the region is considered to be one of the most industrially developed and urbanized regions in northern Russia. Also, Kola is where they did the super deep borehole experiment, where they took a drilling rig and just wanted to see how deep of a hole they could dig. They made it 7.6 miles before the project was shut down in 1995. The first map we get to explore in Kola is Lake Kavd, which may be based off the real location Lake Kavdezero. I say maybe because this map more looks like it's on a coast and looking out over the ocean rather than a lake. But regardless, I really enjoyed this map and think it's beautiful. Coming from Tamir, it was such a different feeling to not be crowded by trees and forest and confined to trails. With the massive frozen lake acting like a superhighway throughout the map and a lot of wide open expanses on the landmasses, I really felt free and like I could take my trucks literally anywhere. And that's my favorite thing about this map, honestly. I touched on it in my 813 video, but Lake Kavd is where SnowRunner finally lets you start pathfinding and not having to stick to trails to get to where you're going. And I enjoy that. I also enjoyed the task and scenery on this map a lot. The scenery and general vibe of this map feels very different from any so far. Yeah, SnowRunner perpetuates feelings of being the only person in the area, but something about Kola in general made me feel so alone in a different way. For the first couple of tasks, I was trying to figure out if this was a functioning area with people actually living in it, or just a long forgotten area that I'm revisiting for some reason. The map gives off vibes of both. The village looks like it should be barely standing. The rail yard is torn apart and who knows for how long. Tass talked about wanting me to scout certain areas to see if buildings were still standing so they could be looted. There's a crashed helicopter not too far from the village. The factory is clearly abandoned and experienced some sort of uprising. Yet there's a mechanic active in the area that wants you to recover some trucks for him. There's a crew of researchers out here doing something. I wonder if it's related to the bunker that you transport nuclear material out of. There's even a couple of small farms in the area as well. So it's a strange sort of vibe that this map gives off, and I just eat it up. The frozen lake is a deceptively easy challenge. It was intimidating at first since I didn't know how SnowRunner would handle this kind of ice, but once I learned how to cheese some of the crossings, it became a breeze and kind of a huge shortcut. There are a lot of trails up and through the landmasses on the map that I didn't ever really have to go through because I could just use the frozen lake. In the video on the Verandy, when I was headed to the second shed, I mentioned getting stuck on a narrow trail with an extremely tight turn that I nearly got stuck on. Turns out I didn't have to go down that trail. I could have just used the frozen lake to get around the hill, and on my way back that's what I did. So I found it interesting that there are a few useless trails and areas dotted around this map. Being as this expansion was called Search and Recover, a lot of the tasks involve you either bringing a vehicle back to a location or driving out into the wilderness to retrieve some cargo. One of the trucks you get to rescue is my favorite scout in the whole game, the Ford F-750. Who knows how it got out here, but who cares? You also unlock the TUZ-16, aka the GAZ-66. I never really used it after I found it, but it's a neat truck, and I'm looking forward to getting to use it more and learn more about it. Speaking of trucks though, the fleet I actually used for this map. If you've been following my series, you would have seen me make my videos on the Tartarin, the 813, and the Verandy, which I did actually use to complete a majority of the jobs in Lake Kavd. especially the 813. The Azov 6.4 was also used for recovering a few tip trucks and hoisting up the prototype exploration trailer. The Step 310 was used, but mostly just as a mobile refueling station. If we were just talking about Lake Covd, the Kola Peninsula would be a 10 out of 10 expansion for me. I think Lake Covd is the map SnowRunner should have opened with. I mean, Michigan is still a wonderful map, but the game is SnowRunner after all. But, and this is a big but, we have to talk about Mandra. Coming from the relative pleasantness of Lake Covd, the difficulty of Mandra actually made me put the game down for a while. This map is hard. There's no easy route anywhere on this map. The entire map is littered with rocks. Every trail is either too narrow or has deep snow and ice. You can't rebuild any of the bridges, and depending on your truck, the shortcuts are extremely dangerous. And on top of that, you don't have immediate garage access, and the gateway to Mandra is on the opposite side of the map as the Lake Covd garage, so you better take some capable trucks up there the first time. Despite having more structures, I think, Mandra feels much more abandoned. All the bridges are destroyed, and there's no task to rebuild them. There's a lot of abandoned military infrastructure and a bunch of buildings buried by snowdrifts. Deep snow is everywhere, and the pace of every single job just goes so slow. Nearly the entire northern and western part of the map are covered in it. There are 3 shortcut bridges that cut across the lake in the middle. 2 can really only be crossed by narrow trucks, as it's just a single concrete slab, and the other basically requires a long wheelbase truck or something with 8x8 to get across the bridge without falling through the ice gaps. Figuring out what trucks to use on this map was a bit of a balancing act, because I wanted the heavy-duty stuff that could cut through deep snow and tackle the terrain, but I needed nimble trucks because every trail is narrow or has too much tree clutter for trucks to get caught on. I used the Tartarn as my main scout again, the 813 as my heavy-duty scout, and the Step 310 with a sideboard bed and a crane for most of my deliveries. And for the special contracts, the Mastodon. Mandra was difficult on the Tartarn because of all the rocks, and there is the most ridiculous scout challenge on the east side of the map, where I had to drive up a winding, walled-in, rocky trail to get up to this lighthouse. I broke the hell out of the Tartarn on this trail. I managed to complete it, but the Tartarn needed to be repaired if I wanted to keep using it after. The Step 310 did fine, but it was a little underpowered for cutting through the deep snow. The fact that it was narrow helped on a lot of the trails though. The 813 spent most of its time on the southern side of the map doing those scout missions. Climbing the big mountain was a lot of fun and offered a stunning view. That was a task I enjoyed. I only used the Mastodon because I was sick and tired of being bullied by this zone. When it came time to do the finale, recovering the old bomber, I brought it out because I was just sick of being on this map. Fishing the bomber out of the lake is easy enough. I had to use the metal detector to find the parts, and then use the Azov 7.3 to get them out, and loaded them onto the wide flatbed trailer hooked up to the Mastodon. It had the power to get through the terrain, but as we all know, the Mastodon is a large boy. Getting the pieces out was not easy. I did each one individually because I didn't want to lose one in the woods. The pieces have to be dropped off at the airstrip, and there really isn't an easy, direct way there. I found myself just going straight north and running along the coast until I could rejoin the main road. I also completely forgot that you unlock the Warthog at the airstrip. Haven't really gotten the chance to use that yet either, so I'm interested to figure out how useful it is. All in all, in some weird way, I enjoyed Mandra now that I'm done with it. It feels nice to say I overcame that challenge. How the hell do you guys do this on hard mode? But at the time, this map was frustrating. There was actually a point where more than half of the trucks I had deployed were either tipped, damaged, or out of gas, and no other map has gotten me to that point. There are some parts of Mandra that are only difficult because they're annoying, like on the road connecting the garage and the trailer store. There's a tree collapsed on the road in the most awkward spot, and it can't be removed. Driving around it isn't necessarily hard, it's just annoying and slows you down. A little farther up that road, there's a small section of road that has a bunch of rocks and some deep, deep snow on it, and I feel like every truck gets stuck right there. You can't really go around it unless you're in a scout because there's a low-hanging obstacle on the trail. So the tactic is just to go full speed at it and to winch yourself out from the other side. Those were mostly annoying obstacles to me rather than fun ones. Mandra is difficult. It's awkwardly spread out and most of the roads are difficult to get through. I give this map a 5 out of 10 for me. I don't really have any hard maps to compare it against since I'm doing the maps in order of release, but I think a bit too much of the difficulty comes from being inconvenient rather than being challenging. I'd give Season 1 Search and Recover a 7 out of 10. As a whole, it was fine, perfectly passable. I'm glad the expansion opens with the bigger, better map. If someone told me they were only doing Lake Covd and skipped a Mandra, I wouldn't blame them. Although a Mandra might be the only place you can get the metal detector upgrade, and I think later expansions use it too, so you might have to do it. What are your guys' thoughts on the Kola Peninsula? Did you agree with my rating? What was your favorite job in the region, or what trucks carried you through it? I'm thinking I want to stick to using Russian trucks, and I'm debating if I want to head to Amur or do Don next. What do you guys think? Anyway, that's all from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.